Welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Anah Parreli. If you're a returning visitor, so good to see you back here. If you're a newbie, I really hope that you enjoy the content. Day numbers is not the first video in the series. We've got a whole series. Do check the playlist. Today we will be looking at day numbers as stated, and this is because day numbers are referred to as a secondary or alternate pathway to the ruling number, which is quite interesting, I believe. So before we look at day numbers specifically, just a reminder that numbers all carry the same magic. There is associations with a number, and the difference with the day number is that a person would not be wise actually to focus on the power of the energy of their day number as opposed to the energy of the ruling number, because this will actually lead to a lifetime of disappointment, so the books say. The reality is that the ruling number is the primary pathway. The day number is referred to as the other aspect of self. It gives us some insight, and we establish it from the day that you were born. And for those of you who have been exploring your ruling number, you will actually see, once you look at your specific ruling number, relatable factors with the ruling number that is your primary pathway. The day number, on the other hand, does show you aspects of yourself that you may not have been aware of, but they're certainly relatable, and you can see how it influences your life. But anyway, let's talk about how we establish what your day number is. It is the day, as in here we've got the example 26th of March 1989. So the day number is the 2 plus 6, the 26 equals 8. So this person's day number would be 8. So just a reminder, the ruling number shows your life path. The day number shows the influences upon your path. If you decided, let's say that you found that your day number was a more attractive number to you than your ruling number, and you decided, no, I don't like the ruling number, I'm going to follow the day number, what will ultimately be the outcome of that is your life will become out of kilter, and you might even battle emotional and psychological instability. So it's just, how would I explain it? In many ways, it's actually a balancing factor, and it comes into, I guess, its own when you look at the birth chart. Now, we're going to be looking at the birth chart series later on, because sometimes there is vulnerabilities that are highlighted through the birth chart, and the day number will balance out some of those vulnerabilities and give a bit of strength. And the other thing is, if a person's got a particularly strong or the personality or character traits of being perhaps harsh with their communication, that might come out in the birth chart. The day number might actually end up softening that by having a softer number set, a more gentle, emotional, nurturing type quality to it. So this is how it will influence a person and the personality and the way they express themselves. Now, when we're looking at the day numbers, they are different to ruling numbers in as far as the way we reflect upon them, because in the ruling number, 1 is not significant, it's the 10. But within day numbers, yes, a person can be born on the first day of the month, so 1 does play a role in identifying how that's going to support us. The 10th still continues to be read within calculations, and of course those people that are born on the 11th of any month or the 22nd have what is referred to as a master day number. So hopefully this is going to be a brief video. I'll stop waffling and I'll get straight into it. Just first of all, obviously calculate your day number, and then I've got video descriptions or the video chapters where you can click on a link and just go straight to your day number and get the information you're looking for. So people who are born with a day number of 1 tend to always achieve their best when they're given the opportunity to work alone. And this is because they need the freedom to be able to express and demonstrate their own initiative. They can appear to be aloof and detached from other people because they do enjoy their solo time. And this is particularly apparent with children. Okay, they definitely enjoy a level of seclusion, and parents should not be too concerned or worried about this. At times, people with a day number of 1 may have problems with others, and this is because there becomes a conflict of wills. They want to do it their way as opposed to working in a team. They definitely have a unique way of expressing that isn't always well accepted by those people around them. And I would say certainly in the initial changes or the first stages of change, and particularly when it's related to the completion of tasks. So people with a day number of 2, they have, well, the 2 is a very intuitive number. So obviously this is going to influence the way they live, and it's an extremely valuable tool for them when they're making their decisions. It also stimulates a desire to work closely with people, especially people that are happy, amenable, and they've got positive, bright, cheery personalities. Those people with a day number of 2, they do enjoy light entertainment, but they prefer to have somebody else entertaining them. And this is in opposition to the fact they don't enjoy being the focus of attention or in the limelight themselves. Their character traits include reliability and supportiveness, because they're very supportive to those people around them. And they definitely have a preference to natural and genuine, whether it's people or fabrics or whatever. They prefer the genuine article as opposed to artificial and superficial. So when we talk about natural flows of the number, it's quite interesting, because where a day number or a person with a day number 2 will be inclined to want to sit back and let others do the entertaining and be the centre of attention, the person with a ruling, not a ruling 3, a day number of 3, they tend to be the ones that are happy to be the centre of attention and to entertain. And they're generally, in my experience, hilarious people. They get a lot of pleasure from making people laugh. They've got a great sense of humour. It's generally very quick-witted and quite sharp, because they have very active and sharp thought processing skills. They can be inclined to be critical of other people who are more serious. And as far as advice goes in regard to day numbers, they would be advised to resist, because they do have this dreadful sense of humour at times. They would be advised to resist the temptation to taunt or criticise those people that they feel to be a bit serious. And if they must be critical, then perhaps they should draw on their humour in sensitive ways to convey their message. So, because everybody can do with lightening up sometimes, especially if they're a bit on the serious side, and the number 3 is good at that. But they can be a bit harsh with their humour sometimes, shall we say. But look, in my experience, if they do have that sharpness, for some reason they're charismatic, and while a person may be shocked and taken aback at times, they can still see the humour, because these people are so witty. This is obviously based on my experience, and generally too, because they have tendencies to be extroverts. They really do. Look, in my experience, they are the people that even when they say the most shocking things, your mouth might hit the floor, but you're actually holding your sides as you drop down laughing. They're just so funny. So those people that are born with a day number of 4, they tend to be really practical, capable people, and they have this tendency or inclination to express themselves with their hands or feet. They're not so much talkers, they're more a case of doers, and they're far more active than the other signs. And they don't, I think, I'm trying to be subtle here, I think that the problems might come in for the 4 because they don't necessarily take the time to think and analyse what they're doing before they actually take the action. So they can be a bit impulsive, and there's not always that reflection. It comes in obviously as they mature and get into adulthood, but certainly during the early and development days, they're more interested in the walking aspects of life. They're not talk the talkers, which is a great attribute to have. They're definitely walk the walkers, but at the same time, if they walk it without giving adequate thought to situations before they take those actions, it can actually lead to difficulties for them. Now, it's really interesting actually, because 4 is a feminine number if we're talking about energies. And so this business of walking the walk would be considered to be an energetic, practical, and I would even go as far as saying potentially masculine. But I don't believe this is the case. I think the reason why the 4, or the difference with the 4, is that when they're walking the walk and they're living positively and upright, they're actually following their own intuition, because 4 is a number of intuition. Now, apparently, if the life path number, which of course is the ruling number, is a odd number, not an even one, then that tends to balance out some of this impulsiveness of the 4 as well. So that's worth considering when you're establishing what this might mean for a person, because ruling numbers and day numbers certainly do interact with each other. The real bit of advice here with a 4, I guess, is that they would be very wise to avoid materialistic pursuits, and to learn that for them personally, they will achieve their best results when they're drawing upon their organisational abilities, when they think before they act. And the funny thing is that although they tend to have an impulsive edge to them, they actually do, in my experience, they do appreciate structure and organisation. And when there's no structure, they tend to get themselves in a bit of a mess, shall we say. So yeah, that would be the advice for the 4, just to take time to think before they act, keep order and structure within their activities, because this is how they operate best in the world. So the people that are born with a day number of 5, they tend to be really compassionate people. They're actually very kind, I must say. It's essential that they be given the space to be able to express their feelings, because their feelings run very deep. They are quite sensitive, but at the same time they have a balance generally. Now, this is when they're living upright, that promotes the ability to achieve great success and happiness, provided they don't become overwhelmed with fears of being misunderstood, because of course communication can be a bit of a challenge for them. If they start to develop the fears of being understood or misunderstood, they may become incredibly shy, and that will actually block them from their self-expression, and there will be an internalized manifestation that could result in what we call angry outbursts. So the people with a day number of 5, they should be encouraged to find a healthy release, such as particularly outdoor exercise and activity, and to also be very selective in the associations that they make. And they should be encouraged to seek the companionship of people who really do enjoy a good laugh, and this will allow them to express their feelings and their joy of living. Now, I think it would be remiss of me not to point out when we talk about numbers, because this is based on my experiences, of course, and my observation of numbers. One of the links that I have made, and I'm not saying it's going to be the same for everybody, because there are other influences on people than just the day number, but in one of my, or not one, in my observations, I have become aware that many people that are born with a day number of 23 would describe themselves as functioning alcoholics, because if you turn around and said to them, wow, you're a big drinker, and in fact, if you went and looked at the list of what defines an alcoholic, they well and truly know how to drink. We would call it here in Australia to drink like a fish out of water or whatever. And I've observed it. I find it absolutely fascinating to watch these people. They are the sort of people that actually, they are successful in business while they can moderate that alcohol consumption and keep control of it to a level. So prime example of this, there was a guy that I had to share a house with at one point in time, and he was actually a really high manager, and he was involved in law enforcement actually. And anyway, basically, he was the type of guy that would get up in the morning and he would knock back his coffees really quickly. He ran by the clock. In fact, most people that I know that have this functioning ability, that I'm talking about, they do tend to work by the clock, because actually I'm thinking of a woman that had a 23 as well. They have tendencies to get out of bed, throw back the coffees to bring this alertment in, or to make themselves more alert, because they've actually been drinking the evening before. They might take one day off a week as part of their dry nights or whatever. But generally they'll get up, they'll go into work, they work high pressure, hard. They're generally actually quite astute thinkers as well, actually. And they work hard and fast and they multitask and all the rest of it. And then they will look at the clock and they'll go, beer o'clock. Okay, this is what I says, male or female. And that is when they crack open a drink and then they moderate it for the next couple of hours, because usually by this time they've come home and they're working from home. And they will have a couple of drinks until a certain time. They'll work from home because they recognise that, let's say their working day finished at 3 p.m. They'd probably have just a couple of drinks, maybe 2 or 3 an hour, until about 5 or 6 p.m., at which time they would close up their computer or close the phone and go, well, that's it, I'm done for the day. And then they would drink until they were wobbly, is the best description. And then all of a sudden they would wobble, stand up and go, well, that's it, I'm done for the day. And then they would wobble off to their bedrooms and go and crash out. So this is why I would refer to them as a functioning alcoholic, and they would say they were functioning because they were still able to meet all their obligations, pay their bills, because they had certain hours within the day where they were completely mentally alert. However, I think by the time they got to a certain age and stage, it just wasn't viable for them. It was starting to impact on their lives. So I'm thinking in past tense here. I'm actually visualizing 3 people with the 23, and I know at least one of them reached a point around about the mid-40s where they just said, no, I've got to stop drinking because it was impeding on their other factors of life, if that makes sense. So I guess the point being here is that you've got a child that's born on the 23rd of any month, is to follow the advice of that's been given here, to teach them how to express, how to balance their time and energy, and to work with them to get them involved in outdoor activities as well, particularly as that release, rather than relying on alcohol or substances. I just want to be clear here, if you've got a child that was born on the 23rd, I haven't noticed any links with the 23 with substance addiction and dysfunction. I've noticed it with functioning alcoholism, and that's it. These people still enjoy a quality of life, but they breathtakingly able to drink would be how I would describe it. So the 6 is a number for creativity, and those people born with a day number of 6, creativity is generally expressed within the home as it happens, and quite often with women. And the way they do this is they'll like to brighten up their home or their workspace. If you go into somebody's office and they've got their little bits and bobs lying around making it look a bit pretty, they probably have a day number of 6 at least. Men will also do little creative things around the house and the garden to create a greater ambience rather than be out with their mates. So when the woman is able to create a space that feels safe and more like a sanctuary, it becomes a place of comfort and relaxation. So the issue is for people with a day number of 6, when they are not able to tap into this creativity for whatever reasons, they can adopt anxiety type conditions, and they can become overdramatic with an almost never ending habit of complaining until they learn to turn these reactive type fears into creative activities. And that could be, what could it be? It could be engaging in a productive hobby, say, such as painting or pottery, something where they can actually see tangible results in a fairly quick way. And this is because as they turn to creativity, say making a pot and all the rest of it, they get that sense of reward for seeing the results of their efforts. So these are just ways that they can work with that, because for the 6, it's not just about the home and creativity. The home is the place and space, I guess. Even if they were living in a tent, that tent would need to feel safe and homey. That's probably the best expression I can give to it. Wherever they live, they will turn it into a home. So by now, if you've watched the other videos in the series, you'll understand that the 7 actually is a number of sacrifice, right, or loss. And immediately people go like, oh my God, no. But I think we need to understand that all sacrifices are not necessarily unwilling ones. They can be personal choices that a person makes. And that could be, for example, the person that says, I've decided I don't want to have children, right? They're perfectly capable of having children, but they've made the choice not to have children. Or they may be able to live, say, in their homeland, but for whatever reasons, it could be an economic decision, they've decided that they don't want to live there anymore. They're going to cut ties with their home country and they're going to immigrate to another one, and that means a loss of family. So sacrifice, or the family connections on a day-to-day basis. So sacrifice is not always forced upon us. Okay, so we need to be clear about that. And so when we talk about people with a day number of 7, this is about them learning about sacrifice through personal experiences. Sometimes, obviously, as I just said, sacrifice can be familial. Sometimes it can be about money. It can be doing the, money doesn't matter. They're perfectly capable of doing a high-flying, high-powered executive role, but they choose not to do it for whatever reasons it is. Yeah. Okay. So the point being, right, that it is through these experiences that they develop their wisdom. And this is the beauty of the 7. So if people think like, oh my God, who would want to be born on a 7 day? The point is that as they mature, they have this wonderful pool of wisdom, and they enjoy sharing this wisdom and experiences because they have learned them at a soul level. They understand. So often you will find them working in professions. I know a couple that do things like kinesiology, and in fact there's a prime example of sacrifice. She made a personal decision not to have children. She did want them at one stage, but she married later. She was selective about who she married. Good for her. She married later, and then they made a shared decision that they weren't going to have children. But she also immigrated from another country over here, and she has a sister who followed her out, but they have all their family, the extended family, and their father lives in the home country because her mother passed away when she was a child. So there's an example of what a person with a life path of a 7 looks like. And I must say, she's an absolutely gorgeous human being. Yeah. So anyway, that's a 7. So the number 8 in and of itself carries with it the energy of independence across all forms. So many people with a ruling number of 8 are going to confuse financial independence with actual independence, but that's somewhat misguided because 8 is referring to emotional independence and the capacity to express themselves freely. And it's this capacity to express that leads them into the other forms of independence, such as the material. So the problems are for a person with a day number 8, if they were to focus their efforts into material pursuits under this whole misguided belief that this is what their focus should be and ignore their relationships, and in the process avoid developing a mature understanding of their personal life, then any prosperity that they manifest is going to, or is usually temporary. The key to success for them is to develop a very deep understanding of themselves and to be able to express the truth of themselves, and then step into that walking their path, centered in their power. And that's about being confident with who they are. They know their strengths, they know their vulnerabilities, they're able to make rational decisions, they're able to communicate and express their needs, and also to express their strengths. Obviously, if they're marketing themselves, trying to do a pitch for developing their own businesses or getting themselves the best jobs, then they're going to be able to express that and stand out, and that will lead to the material prosperity that they're seeking or looking towards. But yeah, generally speaking, in my experience, people with an 8 definitely are associated with abundance, whether it's the ruling number or the day number. And they certainly have a magical quality, the capacity to go, I want X, or I believe I want X, and then to bring it into solid form. I think that's about all I can say about the 8s. This video is getting long. I'm going to try and pick up the pace and not sound like I'm speaking like a rapid-fire bullet. Okay, the day number of 9 expresses itself as idealism combined with a sense of responsibility. So in general, they've got this vision of being able to see the big picture, and they realise what our purpose is, if not theirs. Okay, they can see their purpose in life in relation to the bigger picture, and they can see how we all interact with each other and the environment. So they've got this really wide capacity and perspective. Anyway, the issues for some of the people with the day number of 9 is they can become very overly ambitious. And if this is the case, it can create a form of instability for them if that ambition is not directed towards the greater good, the bigger picture. They can be very intense people, and they can be quite serious too. So part of the advice for them would be to seek the company of people who are bright and happy and light-hearted, and because this will help to lift them from this focused vision that they have. When they're in an intense argumentative situations, there is a risk that they'll lose control of their reason and become a bit fanatical or illogical, and they can appear to be a bit mentally unstable when triggered and reactive. So the best advice for them is to keep their calm, learn to express their feelings and differences in a rational manner and within a logical discussion. In my experiences of working with people, at least with a ruling number of 9, if not a day number of 9, is that they can, once they've developed a negative aspect or whatever, once they shift away from the positive attributes, there is a risk that they can become actually quite focused and get tunnel vision on the things that have been hurtful for them. So it's very difficult to shift their vision to being grateful for the small blessings because they're so focused, and might lose themselves in rumination. Actually, I guess if I was going to apply and there's no evidence to this, I think it would be an interesting exercise to do from a research perspective to find the links between 9 and trauma, shall we say, diagnoses such as PTSD or CPTSD. I think that would be very interesting. Either way, the advice for the 9, when they have become triggered and struggling to focus on the brighter things of life, is to obviously get support from professionally qualified people about developing strategy and technique to manage these symptoms, and also to create the time for mindfulness activities. Not so much meditation, but mindfulness, walking mindfully, eating mindfully, outdoor mindful activities, because that will help them to stay present and focused in the here and now instead of ruminating on the past. So people with a day number of 10 generally are happy and gregarious individuals. They're very adaptable. They tend to be outgoing, they're energetic, and they're easily pleased. They have an abundance of acquaintances and friends usually, and they do have tendencies to seek physical gratification. The advice for them would be that they're wise to guard against superficiality, as this would inhibit and restrict their friendships. They should attempt to develop worthwhile friendships with people who can expand their personal understanding of their life purpose. They can be quite extravagant at times with both their energy, their time, and if they've got money, they can be quite generous with their money as well and extravagant. And if living negatively, to the point of wasteful. And if they do go down this really extravagant, undisciplined pathway, then there is the risk that they will lose absolutely all their physical abundance. Okay, prime example of this, if you've watched one of the videos I've put up, is Prince Andrew. This Machiavellian approach to life, where they just don't worry about tomorrow, or they're not giving a lot of thought. So he is an example of a 10 living negatively. And it would have been helpful if he was advised in the early days that it was best to focus on his talents and gifts and the development of his primary path, that is revealed through his ruling number. And this is the same advice for anybody with a day number of 10. Focus on your path. Check out your ruling number, find out what your path is, and stick to it. And at least get some time management around the partying and responsibilities. Get a balance in there. So the number 11 obviously is only for people born on the 11th or the 29th of each month. It's a master number, and it carries a very high level of spirituality, and this is revealed. Their spirituality comes through in intuitive ways. People with a master 11 would be wise to balance their emotions so that they can fully liberate this intuition, because realistically, let's be clear about this. When we've got our emotional goggles on and got an emotional imbalance, it impacts on our capacity to see and think clearly. Okay, and we make questionable decisions when we're over emotional. So basically, you describe that as a block to the intuition. Over emotionalism is a block to the guidance. So, unfortunately, let's be real about this. Most people born under the day number of an 11 tend to not actually reach the potential. And this is because they've allowed their emotions to block. They've put themselves into situations, perhaps not always, of course. Some things we've got no control of, but as we become adults, we do have at least some control over the choices that we make. And in this instance, people with a day number of 11, if they have found themselves living with moodiness and anxiety, they would be encouraged to take some actions very quickly. And if that involves getting a counsellor or something like that to help them work through and reverse the symptoms, then that would be what they need to do so that they can tap back into the intuition. Because look, it's a teaching number. Okay, this is the thing, that if they can tap into it and access this inner guidance, they can actually share that and teach other people how to do it, which is why it's actually important. So it's a great gift and blessing to have an 11. But just to be clear, I'm going to be straight up about this because I have a master number, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. In my experience, because I've met a lot of people with master numbers, it's supposed to be rare, but those of us that have got them just turn around and go like, really? Yeah, whatever. Most of us say that, when we first heard about master numbers, and that we're like, oh, ooh, that's exciting, before we knew that we had one, before we knew how to do numerology. Like, oh, that's exciting. I wish I had a master number. And then you find out what a master number is. And mastery is a life path. It's a journey. It's not I've arrived, here I am, hello, I'm a master. It is the sum of the life experiences, and it's an achievement by the end of your life. So for a person that's got a ruling 11, not a ruling 11, well, even a ruling 11 actually, but the day number of 11 as well too, yeah, it's about developing mastery. So you would say in the day number context here that this master number is saying this is your potential that you can hope to achieve by the end of your days, and hopefully before you pass over, so that you can share this wisdom, because you're meant to be a teacher, right? But to be able to teach, they have to actually live first, and there has to be this experience. And so if a person goes down a pathway of moodiness and anxiety, that is part of their pathway to learn to master it, to master those symptoms, so that they can rise above them and then share their skills with other people. So I'm just putting this to you like that. I'm going to go and take a look at the number 22 now. So the 22, once again, is a master number, and I want you to understand that as I go into this, I've got my tongue in my cheek, all right, because I'm not comfortable actually sharing what is written about the 22, and this is because my birthday is a 22. I'm a 22. So I can honestly say that I believe this. Well, in fact, I have absolutely no doubt, okay, that this is why my life path is or it certainly had an influence on it. Okay, so I'll just tell you basically what the books say. If I've got time, I'll give you a bit of personal experience and knowledge and understanding that I've learned about the number. Okay, it is supposed to be hugely powerful. It carries with it the traits of balanced, intuitive, with practical application, leading to the knowledge that anything is possible. Now, I actually would agree with that little bit, because, of course, I do have intuitive aspects, but my whole approach to life is, well, if it's not of practical use, if it's not going to help other people to live a better quality of life, what is the point of having these intuitive gifts? So I personally, without realizing it, allowed the 22 to influence me when I made the decision that if my prophetic dreams and that kind of stuff are not going to help other people, then don't show me. I'm not interested. I don't want to know about it. Okay. But if you are going to show me dreams or give me information that's going to help people, please pour it in me. You know what I mean? I'm open to receive. So there's that aspect. It says that the power will only be realized once a person has achieved full integration over the mind, body, and spirit planes. Power for the sake of power and control brings imbalance, unrest, and fragmentation. Look, I don't know about that. I think when I was in my most powerful as far as spiritual energy goes, that was probably between the years of 2000, 2002. And I was working at a very high energetic level, and I made the decision that it wasn't practical for me to be working that high. But that's another story for another day. Anyway, when we talk about power for the sake of power and control, it brings imbalance, unrest, and fragmentation. That's not something that I can relate to because I've actually never sort of wanted to be the number one head honcho. I do agree with the bit that says that because the number is associated with power and it's considered to be so powerful, it is quite common that a person will focus on the day number attributes rather than their ruling number. So there is a little bit of a truth to that for me. At one stage, once I became aware of the implications of a 22, it was like, well, I don't mind that because it's got visionary qualities to it. But anyway, I'll talk about that in a moment. And I thought, oh, that sounds attractive. But the bottom line is that, yes, it's not my primary pathway, and we're meant to be focusing on our primary pathway. And the visionary aspects and the power of the 22 is simply supposed to support that pathway. And I would also make the point that in regard to the 22, I've known heaps of people with a 22 because I've got them in my family. My son's got a 22. My grandmother was a 22. Throughout the course of providing services to people, I've met many, many numbered 22s. And I can honestly say that I have never known anyone to, if we associate power with being heads of organisations and that kind of stuff, actually I did a rethink when I was typing this stuff up. And that is that these so-called powerful people, they don't seem to be powerful in the way that you or I might envision power. They're not heads of nations. They are not in leadership roles per se. None of that. In fact, most of them have had some really significant struggles throughout their life, and they're not necessarily doing financially well either. But I would say that actually, if there's a power that they've got, what I have observed is the power of love, actually. These people have all been so incredibly loving, so very loyal. They've taken on burdens and responsibilities that weren't necessarily theirs, but they've done it because they care, because they're humanitarians and because they love people and they love humanity. And one person I can think of, she was a grandmother. She ended up married a man who had children, so she was the stepmother. And one of the children was intellectually impaired. And he ended up, where I'm going with this is she ended up taking full responsibility for him, and she cared for him as her own son until he passed away at age 75. She was in her 90s by that stage, and she ended up passing away a couple of years after he passed. So, you know what I mean? That is, you'd like to think that, okay, I've got to be careful how I phrase this. We would all like to think that if somebody takes on a stepchild, that they will love that child as their own as well. The reality is not many people will actually do it. And I see the fact that this lady cared for this young man for 65 years. I say young man, he was a boy. I think he was about 10 when she adopted him or married into the family. Anyway, yeah, she cared for him for 65 years. At no time did she turn around and go, not my responsibility, not my problem. So I would also say that the power of the 22 actually is the compassion, because it becomes a motivating factor. There is another observation that I have made about the number of 22, or people with the day number, and I'm sort of torn a little bit about whether or not I should share this in a public forum. And this is because so many people are into labeling theories. So I don't think that I will actually publicly disclose the observation here, but it is one that has been repeated, and I've never seen anybody with a day number of a 22 that has not had the experience that I'm referring to. Some people might be able to put that together, but I'm not going to put it in the public forum here. So that's it in regard to the day numbers. But I just realised as I came to a close here, there was something more after I've done the 22. Of course, I've realised there was something more I could have added to information and content about the threes, particularly if somebody's got a child with a day number of a 3. And that is that in my experience, most people that have got a 3 as a ruling number or a day number, they struggle with boundaries because they're such happy people and they love to make everybody happy. It often results in them having too loose boundaries, being too flexible, struggling to say no to people simply to keep them happy. And then the other factor with that is there can be difficulties with self-control and impulsiveness because they've got this sense of humour. They can be a bit reckless because it's all a big joke at the time, isn't it? I think there's a saying about it's all fun and games until somebody's crying. And I think in a way that's probably applicable to the 3 until they learn to have some self-control and some self-discipline, because everyone's laughing, it's all a big joke until it goes too far. Now, the other thing too, if I had a child with a 3, a day number of a 3, I would be really working with them to encourage them to develop boundaries to say no to people, and how to comfortably say no, and that it's okay to say no. Because what happens, and if you speak to a mature 3, in my experience, they will always acknowledge this, is they will say yes, yes, yes to everything. Even when they don't want to, they will say no. They will want to say no, particularly when it comes to their intimate relationships, because they want to please their partner. They will go, yes, yes, okay. And the partner will be saying, can you do this? Can you do that? And they'll go, yes, 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 thinking, no, why can't you do it yourself? But they say yes, and then all of a sudden they're fed up with it and they snap and they explode. And then the person that's been, the intimate partner is like, well, what did I do? All it was the straw that broke the camel's back. That's all. It was not a big deal. The 3 has to learn to turn around and say, look, do you mind? No, thank you. Or can't you do that yourself? Or do you mind? Can I do that later? They've got to find ways to be able to say no, not right now, not ever. And they need to be able to put in place these boundaries and know how to take that space to self-care as well. So that's part of that. Now, that is definitely the end of the day number of content I've got for you. Next week, we're going to start looking at name numerology. And we're going to be doing that before we do the birth chart. Now, I realised after the fact that I've created the name numerology video. I've almost finished it. And in fact, I've probably done it back to front. I should have done the birth chart first, but I thought, no, I'll do if I can speak. I will do the name numerology first because the birth chart is complex. It's going to be another series like the ruling number, I would envisage. And I sort of thought, if I can do the name numerology first, that means that it's one less video I've got to do. You've got this one. But the bottom line is that name numerology will be good for those people that are adults now, but for people that are having a baby or who have just had a child and are in the process of picking a name, the name actually should be picked or selected after you've looked at things like the day number, ruling number, taken a glance at the birth chart, see what the strengths and vulnerabilities are on that, because the name will actually balance out some of these other traits. But either way, bottom line is next week we're looking at name numerology, and I will talk about it more then, and hopefully I'll see you there. So anyway, for now, take care. Bye-bye for now. Pleasure having you as part of my journey. See you next week. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.